Good evening, folks. My name is Erin Brunel. I am one of the co-chairs of the Joint School Committee City Council. We're going to officially call this meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. on Wednesday, September 28th. Just a reminder to the public and those joining us, this meeting is being recorded, and we are on Zoom this evening. Present with us this evening is myself. I am the chair on the school committee side. Also with us is Juan Anderson Burgos. He is the chair on the city council side. And then with us as well is Counselor Jenny Rivera, school committee member John Willihan, and then on Zoom we have Yadialet Rivera Colon, and I know that Miss Murphy Rumboletti will be joining us shortly. So we will go ahead and get started. Okay. So the first item on our agenda is an order was filed with the city council to discuss with the receiver / superintendent to see if the district has done any exploration and has any will to bring back the junior ROTC program. The superintendent is with us here this evening. Him and I spoke briefly. There's not really much plans going on with that. But if anybody has any conversation they'd like to add or discussion or questions for the superintendent, it's hard to know if there's really a will to establish a junior ROTC program again in the city. So if anybody, if Mr. Soto, if you have anything that you want to discuss or anyone else, feel free to. Mr. Willihan?
Thank you. I think this was brought up by Mrs. Williams, maybe. She brought that up. Okay, I know she had talked about that before. I know she was like a graduate of it back in the day, so I know she's a supporter of that. So I just want to make that known that she's in favor of that. Thank you.
Mr. Soto?
Right, sorry. Yeah, this order was filed a while back, and the counselor that filed it is, not here at the moment, so I'm not sure what information we were expected to provide. I just know currently we do not have a JROTC program, and if we wanted to explore having one, there is a federal grant, and if it is the will of this body or the city council or the school committee, we'd be happy to do more research and see what that entails. But I don't know why this was filed or what information that person was looking for.
Do you know how long it's been since we've had a junior ROTC program?
I know when we had one, it was at Dean. It was back when I was in school. I don't know when that ended.
Thank you. Mr. Willihan?
Thank you. Yeah, I think in my recollection, we had it maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and it was disbanded for some reason. I don't know whether it was a lack of students that were currently involved with it. Maybe we can do like another survey, because I mean the dean population has certainly changed in the last 10 years in the positive in terms of the numbers. Maybe you can do like an email, like a quick survey. Anyone interested in it?
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to that.
So a motion that the school district maybe surveys the student population to see if there'd be interest in redeveloping the program?
Yeah, just to gauge it.
Okay. Does anybody want to second that?
Second, I would also include like in the past when they had this program, what were the success stories and stuff like that? Like what was the impact, and also why was it removed? Like just so that we can compare to like is this going to be something that we can look forward to, or something that's gonna.
So would you like to amend the motion to also include a report from the school department on the history of the ROTC program?
Please.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to ask the school department to survey the high school population to see if there'd be interest in junior ROTC, and also to get a report back from the school department on the history of the ROTC and why we stopped having it. So on that motion, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we do need to do roll call because we have members of the body online and in person. So, Mr. Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Miss Jenny Rivera, Mr. Jay Willihan,
Yes.
Miss Yedley Rivera Cologne. I'm sorry, I just did that.
Yes.
Can I just call you Jotty when we're in a meeting or, okay, thanks. I'm so sorry.
Yadi let.
Yes, and myself is a yes, and I don't believe Miss Murphy Rumboletti has been able to join us yet. Okay, great. So that motion moves forward. Thanks, everybody. We'll keep that. I guess it stays tabled until we have more, right? Or that is the official. Oh, sorry. Okay, thanks. So moving on, the second item on our agenda this evening is to discuss the city council's recent order and vote to change the name of the joint school committee and city council. I would like to recognize that Counselor, oh my God, I cannot talk. Juan Maldonado Velez is in the building with us as well. And we will certainly entertain hearing from him as he was the person who filed the order originally. So Mr. Maldonado Velez, if you'd like to come to the microphone right there. So the reason I put this on our agenda is when it got sent to us, Jeff Anderson Burgos, the admin for the city council, thought it would be a good idea to discuss here. I can say that from the school committee's point of view, basically we were just disappointed to not be notified of the order, to not be involved with the discussion of the order, and to simply be notified of the change. So I thought this is obviously the place to have the discussion as it's this committee that's being talked about being changed. So I'd like to hear from you. You know, I've read everything, but just hear from you, like your thoughts behind, you know, what exactly you want to accomplish. Like I said, I do have a copy of the order and I've read the minutes and the notes on it. It seems to me like it's something that maybe we want to have be a separate committee. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure where the city council is with it currently. So by all means, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you said that, I think that's possibly one of the solutions. So I just want to go and explain though, like as to, first of all, like tonight when I got the email that there's a youth services committee formerly known as I was like, wait, no, that's not what I wanted to do. This is still in my eyes, like the joint school committee, city council committee meeting. My intention behind this was, so similar last night, for example, we had ordinance / planning board committee meeting, and in those spaces what happens is whenever there's conversations where the ordinance committee and the planning board have a discussion together, they'll bring it up, and then the ordinance still has other stuff that it can discuss. So as far as on this, that was my intention, where the on the city council side we have a youth services committee that does hopefully the intention, like issues that can't be discussed within the school committee, but are also still our representatives within the joint school committee, city council committee meeting, if that's makes sense where I was trying to go with that. I think the order is definitely clearly with the intention how it laid out, it's not done. So I'm glad that this happened and that we're taking it up here, because I do want to apologize for that, even though I thought it wasn't gonna affect anything on the school committee side. One, it clearly did, and also the reality, the name school committee is on it, so it should have, as a respectful way, this should have been brought it up to y'all and to have this discussion. So I do apologize for that. But I did meet with Mildred last month, and not married to this. This is not like the hill I'm dying on. I think, again, my intention is, and speaking with Mildred, was they're just an example. Within the city council rules, we have that we need to have a youth representative. Technically, that's not something that can be discussed within this body, but if we had the youth services committee meeting, committee separate doing that, then it can be done. Another example, I know in the community, a lot of people have been talking about like a youth center of sorts or something, which is also something that possibly can't be discussed with the joint school committee because it's not grade school related, but it's still something that I would like the youth services committee to discuss. which I know one is probably giving me like, "Joy, you want me to have more work?" No,
Actually,
just one more meeting, one more meeting. So that's really where it was from. So like I said, when I saw the youth services committee formally, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like this is still the joint school committee, city council committee. I think the language, and I think you when you spoke around like possibly a separate committee, we can either have a separate committee where this is just named the city council rules and have a separate youth services committee, or one thought that I had as well was putting it in the rules where it's like youth services committee deals with issues around youth and are the representative in the joint school committee and city council committee meetings. So again, open to anything. Like I think there's also doesn't have to be said today. We want to go back to the meetings and tell Jeff like, it should be the joint school committees whenever these take place. Then yes, that should be a thing. But again, I think there's an opportunity here. We do have a lot of youth issues, and hopefully, this committee is able to do that. So.
Thank you. I just want to mention, I was reminded I did not cover the base that we do have interpreter services available. So if you're on the Zoom and you need an interpreter, please feel free to comment in the chat and we can get you connected with that. Oh, click the globe at the bottom. Click the globe at the bottom. Sorry. I was unfamiliar with that. Thanks, Juan, for sorry, Jose. I'm so sorry. I know that. I'm sorry. I'm horrible with names. Jose, thank you so much for coming in tonight and discussing this with us. Do any members of the committee have any comments or discussion they would like to have? Mr. Willihan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for the order. I really appreciate your efforts getting the youth involved. I mean, especially with the COVID and the students today having anxiety issues for COVID and the masks and the social distancing. So there's a lot of issues out there with our students. So getting them involved in any form is positive. So thank you for that. We currently have 2 student reps that attend our meetings, and they kind of give us their viewpoint on what's going on with the school. So that's always positive. So thank you.
I'd like to recognize Counselor Israel Rivera is on Zoom and he had a comment, so we can call on him next. Go ahead, Izzy.
Hey, how you guys doing? So I kind of wanted to add to what Jose was saying. I think because we had kind of like I was part of the conversation when he wrote the order. The idea was to kind of like encapsulate all the youth within the community. Because there are youth as well that like attend private schools, that school choice out, that go to charter school, that don't encompass within public schools. So like when you name it Youth Services Commission, it's encompassing everything, right? And it's including, because if we could do a separate committee, then whatever, it's cool. But it just like I feel like we'll be doing 2 of the same things in different committees, and then they'll be meeting a lot and coming together a lot for different issues that go on throughout the community. I think that was part of the intention why I was on board with him. At the same time, like it's not to come at the school committee and try to take out their meeting. No, that was not the idea or the intention. But yeah, it was more about bringing in more of the other kids within the community, charter school community, private school community, and just kids that are in whatever alternative programming there possibly is, or just school choicing out. So that way, whenever we're putting out information, everyone is invited and everyone is getting that type of information, not just public school students or parents or families. But thank you for the recognition.
Thank you, Counselor Rivera. Yes, Jose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So going off with Israel, so like that's also a question that when I spoke with Mildred last month, that was sort of the question that came up. Like if it was possible for a city council and that's for the school committee to discuss other like bigger like other stuff that's not just directly related to the school committee, then that was also part of the reason to change it to youth services. But after the conversation with her, like it just seemed like it can't happen. So
Okay, so I don't know that I would say it can't happen. I think the thing that's important to note is that the joint school committee city council committee was formed as a place to discuss issues that from the school committee's perspective, the city council needs input on, and from the city council's perspective, what they might need input on the school department from. Because at the end of the day, Holyoke Public Schools is a city department, right? So it's like Park and Rec, or it's like the police department or the fire department. So that's what this body was formed to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we couldn't rewrite the rule, right? Like the committee was established at some point. So you could potentially revisit what the committee's role is. It sounds to me, and obviously I'm not the sayer, but it sounds to me like what you guys are talking about would possibly need to be a new committee. And then it would be wonderful if it was open to city councilors and school committee members, because obviously as school committee members, we are involved with the youth of the city. And most of us like to be involved in as many ways as possible to help service all the youth in the city of Holyoke. So I think for, and again, this is just, what I have to say on the subject, but so just keeping in mind that, like budgeting and busing and buildings and maintenance, that's the kind of thing, and I understand it was said too, like there just tends to not be a lot on this committee's docket. I don't know if that might shift once we're out of receivership or not, and we have more control of our city. I know I have things I would like to see from the city council happen, as far as budgeting goes with the school department. But that's essentially what this committee was established to do. So I'm just not sure if changing what this committee does is the answer, or if establishing a new committee is the answer. Does anybody else on the committee have any thoughts or ideas or concerns or discussion they'd like to add to the conversation, or a motion on anything? Mr. Burgos, Anderson Burgos.
Thank you. I think we're onto something, but what I'm trying to figure out, like your main objective is to give a voice to the students, I'm assuming, and so that they can be part of the process, it seems. This is what I'm getting from it. And I'm on page with Chair Brunel that changing the name at this point and all the work that we're doing with the joint committee is something different from what you want. And I think we need to have further discussion on this. So I'm assuming maybe tabling it so that we can maybe have more time to think about what we're trying to do, or we can, I'm stuck here.
My thought on the matter would be to refer it back to city council, which is where the order originates from, and then maybe filing a new order to have as a new discussion point, and then bring back to the appropriate committees to discuss possibly establishing a new committee and what that would look like and how to get people involved.
I'll make that motion.
On the motion, is there any further discussion?
Are you okay? Oh, go ahead.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
On the motion, is there any further discussion from the sitting members of the committee? Okay, Jose, if you'd like, please.
So yes, so clearly changing the name was not gonna do what I intended it to do. It clearly didn't. But I think we're on where it's something that I think a new committee. So there's in charter and rules, there are other orders to create other type of committees, and I think this may be one, and I think goes back to the language around I would not to add a whole nother different committee with different people, because honestly the people that are the three counselors that are on here are, when I think of who would can do youth work, these are the three perfect counselors that we have. but having the youth services committee be the committee that represents us in the joint school committee.
I see what you're saying. Almost
City
like a
council
subcommittee
meeting.
of the subcommittee.
Yeah, in a way. So I mean, it's not final. We can look at it, but I just, at the end of the day, this right here is still the joint school committee, city council committee, not the youth services committee. We just have the youth services committee representing the city council here. So yeah, whatever it is we want to do, I can sit on it. Our next charter and rules committee meeting is on the 24th. So anything that we want to put in to discuss, it'll be, what do we have for that second city council meeting? Let me see. By the 14th.
Okay.
So just
Ms. Rivera Colon?
I think that what the intention for that new committee, it's right on. I think that our youth need a space to be involved in civic engagement and to be part of what happens in the city. It's just not in the right spot right now. It's in part of the reason because we do not represent all those other students and youth that are part of the city who are not in Holyoke Public Schools. And the charge of the committee is different. I do think that having the idea of having a new committee that actually focuses on youth services is going to be really beneficial. I just don't think that it can be within this committee because especially as we transition out of receivership, there's going to be a lot of things that we're doing. There's going to be the new middle school. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to need input from city council that we are going to be then losing on the other issues that youth are involved in. So I think that to make sure that we encompass all of the different things that we need to do to serve, it should be a different committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to recognize that Counselor Murphy Ramboletti has been able to join us. Thank you. Get her on the attendance roll.
Sorry,
I just wanted to
friends.
see, that's okay. Counselor Rivera, did you have another comment you'd like to make, or was your hand still raised from before?
Nah, just to second what Jose was saying, and most of what you guys are saying with regards to creating another commission. But I think that for us and thinking it through is like not thinking that you guys would change any of the structure or anything of any one of the charges that you guys already have, but just pretty much encapsulating or maybe taking on a little more with regards to youth commission services, because you guys already have reps. You already have something structured in place, and just encapsulating some of that with what we're trying to intend. Maybe the change of the name was not the right way to go at the end of the day. But ideally is you guys somewhat have a structure in place where you guys have people that are students that run, and then they have to actually be sitting at the seat with you guys at the table. And we're supposed to have somebody too, technically, at the city council table too. So the idea is picking from you guys to get us one of the students or youth from throughout the whole city up here at the council with us. And it's kind of like collaborating and building a larger piece within that commission. Maybe the idea was changing the name was wrong, or maybe a separate committee does make sense, because it is true with regards to Dr. Yadilet Rivera Colon with the new transitions that are coming through the pipeline with regards to a new school and trying to move and navigate with regards to possibly exiting receivership if that's possible in the future or in the near future. So like maybe it would be right to entertain another group, but we thought that in the moment, like it made sense. Like you guys have something already structured. It doesn't make, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like, so, but the name, I guess, nix it.
I think you guys might have to fix that on the city council side, but Mr. Soto?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge that Mayor Josh Garcia had reached out to me earlier in the year, and I think he had allocated about $10,000 to bring back a youth commission. So I am working with Lori and the Lori McKenna, the high school principal. We are looking for somebody to coordinate it at the school. We've already identified like 3 people. The students are very much excited in doing this, and we have staff ready to support. But you know, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know like what their role in reporting back to the city council is. I will be touching base with the mayor to see like what his expectations are on that, because I know that this was something that existed back in the day. And it was very important to him, and you know, I wanted to make sure we got our students involved, and we got some staff members at Holyoke High North, and we got some students at Holyoke High North and Dean and Opportunity Academies that are very much interested in reviving this. But we need to work out the details on like, what does that mean in terms of, do they report quarterly to the city council? Do they report to this joint committee that you guys are talking about? But I just wanted to add that because it's very relevant to this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I would say, you know, and kind of going with what we're discussing, having them report to this committee, like, you know, like you're saying, kind of a way to incorporate it all so that's coming through. But then, of course, keeping in mind, if that's coming through the schools and that's not incorporating all the youth of Holyoke, but maybe it can be established where the city council also sets up some kind of committee with other community organizations, and this is the venue where it's all reported out on. So I'd also like to just, you know, point out, you know, anybody at any time can file anything that can be referred to this subcommittee and then be put on the agenda. You know, one of the reasons we don't meet that often is because we just don't have a big docket. You know, we'd be happy to meet more frequently if there's anything that any counselors or school committee members or members of the public feel like this body needs to be meeting about. You know, I would love to see us be meeting monthly, if we simply had, you know, the agenda to warrant that. So on the motion is to refer this back to the full council to then restructure and figure out the best way to bring it back to us. Does that
That's correct.
explain it? Okay. Okay, so on the motion, I'm going to do roll call. Mr. Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Miss Jenny Rivera.
Yes.
Mr. Jay Willihan.
Yes.
Miss Rivera Colon.
Yes.
And Miss Murphy Rumboletti.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, we have an update from, thank you, Jose, and thank you, Councilor Rivera. Moving on, we have an update from the receiver / superintendent. Thought it would be a good idea to bring an update to the city council about where we are at with the school building committee and rezoning, to mainly put some emphasis on when we'll be coming to you all with a vote request. So Mr. Soto, take it away.
Great, thank you. Sam, that's not the right presentation. The name of the presentation is Joint City Council School Committee Subcommittee.
Well, that's happening. I want to acknowledge that the date that is in the little banner that says Joint Committee of the City Council and School Committee says May 26th. So it is incorrect. So if anybody is trying to watch and sees and scrolls through, it is the newest meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, so while Sam is pulling up the presentation, I see she's in it right now. I just wanted to bring back, for many of our school committee members, this is going to be repetitive because we did just provide an update at the last school committee meeting, but the last time we met about this topic was in May of last year. So we think that this is such an important effort in Holyoke Public Schools that you know, we want to provide regular updates to this joint committee, because the school committee is going to be getting it every month. But I also think it's very important for our city councilors to know what's going on in regards to this effort. So if you go to slide 3, I just wanted to bring up this flow chart and point out that where the last time we met was back in May, and we were in that blue box called eligibility period in the second row. And thank you to the city council for voting on funding for the feasibility study. That was a huge milestone for this project to move forward. And right now where we're at is in that green box called the feasibility study. If you skip to slide 6 or 5, sorry. One of the biggest milestones that we hit was as part of the feasibility study, we had to go in front of the MSBA's FAS subcommittee, and we did that on September 14th. And the primary goal of that meeting is to give us an opportunity to articulate our ed plan that was submitted as part of the feasibility study, and to give an opportunity to certain subcommittee members on the MSBA board to ask questions before they move us further along into the project. So on that date, on September 14th, we did meet with them. I was joined by the mayor. I was joined by Aaron Brunel, Aaron Linville, Whitney Anderson, and we were able to present to them. And this was basically the agenda that we shared with them. It was the purpose and vision for the future. We gave them a little background information as to like how we ended up where we are in this MSBA project. And then one of the most important pieces that we updated them is that a huge component of our ed plan is our rezoning effort, which is to go from last year we had 11 different schools with 9 different grade configurations. And that is not a model that would really support students and families. So we will be moving forward with a model to better support families moving to elementary, middle, and high schools. So we gave them a lot of information, like the background story, which you'll hear from me a little, as we progress through this slide deck. Next slide, please. So here is an example of all of the outreach efforts since 2020. So we all know that, in 2019, we had a failed vote for the 2 new middle schools. And since then, we've done a lot of work to get back into the pipeline with the MSBA, hopefully get a new middle school. We've had 11 school building committee meetings. We had 7 school committee meetings where we talked about it. We've had 6 meetings, either this body or at city council where it was discussed. And you can see like the amount of outreach involved in this project is very, very vast. I'm proud. One of the things that, is really important to me is really named in our strategic plan. It's called Moving Forward Together. I think that a decision like this, we want to get as much voice as possible from anyone in the community, from families, from students, from everyone. So we've done a lot of outreach since 2020, and I want to recognize and acknowledge our family engagement team. They're led by Stephanie Garcia and Jasara Burgos. They work tirelessly to make sure they're at every event. They're at the back to school event, even at my son's basketball game this summer in South Holyoke. Every Friday they were there handing out pamphlets, trying to reach as many parents as possible, because we know how important this is for Holyoke Public Schools, for our youth, and for our families. And then the last thing we discussed with that subcommittee was the proposed project schedule. And basically, what you see in front of you is where we're at in the process right now. And you can see in that yellow, there's two options in terms of when we actually go to the city council to ask for funding for the full project. And in all three of these scenarios, you know, the earliest we would ever be able to have a brand new school is in the fall of 2026. I have been advised from our project manager that, you know, naming 2026 and continuing to say that is could be worrisome because the project might not end up happening. It all depends on when the vote happens and like during the construction phase and everything, that no issues come up so that we can open in the fall of 2026. But that is an aggressive timeline in all of these scenarios. And I think that worst case scenario, we could potentially be looking at either the fall of 26 or the fall of 27 in all of these. So we reviewed that with the committee, and then you know, that they expressed to us what the next steps were in terms of advancing to the next stage, which really is exploring that model school option, which the MSBA said to us, hey, there may be some savings involved if you go through this model route, and you know, we've been pretty transparent from the school building committee side of the house. We've been pretty transparent that we're going to explore all options to make sure that, you know, like as long as it aligns to our ed plan, we're going to explore our all options to be fiscally responsible and do this project to the best of our ability while taking finances into account. So we did meet. The next steps is we're going to be inviting model school designers to make proposals. I think that's going to be advertised over the course of the next 3 weeks. We'll be able to review those proposals and interview those architects in the month of October. We'll rank applicants and then negotiate with whoever the top ranked candidate is in the process. And we do finally have our OPM hired. Margaret, she was the same OPM that was with us for while we were exploring the 2 new middle schools. She has a lot of knowledge in this, and she's very, very supportive of Holyoke, and is really like holding our hand every step of the way to make sure that the committee is making informed decisions and meeting our targets between now and when we get a new middle school. Anything you want to add to that?
Not specifically to this particular section. You know, I think the state wanting to explore the model program, though it might slow us down slightly, is a great potential for savings on the city side. So I think it was critical that we do our due diligence and explore every option to try to make the project as affordable for the city as possible. And I would just like to note that the next meeting of the school building committee is on Thursday, October 6th. It's a Zoom meeting, and it's posted publicly, just like every other public meeting. You know, we'd love to see city councilors who aren't members attending, school committee members who aren't members attending, members of the public attending if they have any questions or concerns. And then tomorrow night is we're having a rezoning meeting. Where is that, Mr. Soto?
That's going to be at Holyoke High at 5:30. We'll have some fun events for students. We're partnered with the YMCA and Learn in Motion. They'll be doing some fun activities with kids, and we also have transportation from several schools throughout the city for some families that might need it. I believe it's Sullivan and Donahue. We have transportation from those locations if families need to get down to Holyoke High School.
And I think it's important to note that you know, a new school and the rezoning doesn't just affect Holyoke Public School students and Holyoke Public School families. It affects the city as a whole. So, you know, even if you're not an active member of the school community, you could still attend these meetings and stay informed on what's going on. Does any other members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Soto, Mr. Willihan?
Thank you for the presentation. One quick question. You kind of mentioned the bidding process for the building. Is that going to be handled on, through the city's procurement office or through the schools?
It'll be handled through the building committee
Building committee, okay,
with the assistance of our OPM.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wilhan. Any other questions or comments for the superintendent? All right,
Great.
thank you, Mr. Soto. Did you
Great.
have more?
Oh yeah, I had a
Oh,
lot more.
Sorry. Well, when you asked me if I had anything to add, I thought
Oh,
you were
on that
finished.
that was just an update from the school building project itself.
Right.
But an important part of this project is going to be our rezoning effort. So I want to bring this to this committee because it's so important, and you've probably seen it on social media. You probably heard it on different videos. You've probably seen it on Facebook, but this is what it's about. So, the next slide, next couple slides go after. So we'll give you some background and basically here's a quick overview. We are transitioning to separate pre-K to 5 elementary, 6 to 8 middles, and in the process, we're redrawing the boundary lines in the fall of 2023. That can get messy, and we're doing everything that we can to get the word out. I was just at the PEC open house earlier today, and I was just at STEM, which is upstairs, earlier today, and I took 1 minute just encouraging people to go to the meeting tomorrow because it affects over 50% of our students. We know that although this is going to affect many families in the immediate, this is the best thing that we can do to better serve our families, better serve our kids so that they're better prepared academically, so that there's continuity in our dual language and SPED programming, so that there's equity in our schools in terms of demographics. Like right now we have, one of our schools is almost 50% special ed. We would not design a middle school like that. We would make sure that there's a balance in demographic in all of our schools so that we can better support our students. And we want to make sure that this plan diverts, resources that are quite frankly being spent outside of the classroom, that it diverts it into the classroom. For example, when you have more buildings and when you have, you spend more money on snow removal, more money on utilities, all like throughout this process, we could save money on things like that. And we could then reinvest that money into the classroom. That's the simplest way that I can explain diverting more resources to instructions as opposed to operations.
And some of those savings are what we're offering back towards the school building funding, right? The $1 million annually.
Well, $500,000.
Those savings.
Yeah,
Oh,
$500,000.
sorry, it was $1 million when it was 2 schools. But
Yeah.
some of those savings will be realized because of this rezoning effort.
Correct. That is correct. So some quick background. Many of you know our efforts over the last 7 years, but I'll summarize them on the next slide. Over the past 7 years, we've tried to build 2 new middle schools. We've explored different middle school models. You remember we had Veritas, we had the P3 program, we've created the STEM program. We have a growing dual language middle school now. So we've explored many different things. So I think the point I want to make here is that this is not a new effort. We've been working at this for the last 7 years, and it's finally time to just do it. And next year's when we're going to do it. I spent a lot of time last year during my first year as superintendent, really getting feedback from teachers, from students, from families, from community members. And I asked them, what's working? What do we need to change? And what are your hopes for the future? And throughout many of those conversations, I heard loud and clear, and it wasn't the first time I had heard that, because I had heard it, even when I came 6 years ago, that a lot of families want to revert back to that elementary, middle, and high school. We got a lot of great feedback, and that feedback was converted into there was an entry plan findings report. We put a committee together to take a look at that report, and then develop a strategy, which we're calling Moving Forward Together. And it was a plan developed by Holyoke for Holyoakers. So it was really an inclusive process, but we heard loud and clear in a lot of those conversations that we really need to make this happen. I'm going to be providing a brief overview of everything today, but we have so much information on our website. If anybody is interested, we have quick 10-minute videos. We have a 90-minute video. The 10-minute video or 20-minute video is really designed just high level. This is what we're doing. And if you want to dive deeper into it, you can always look at the longer video that goes into detail. So we're trying the best we can to just get the word out and get as much feedback as possible. On our website, hps.holyoke.ma.us /MS redesign is where you can find all that great information. Since the spring, we've had 3 meetings. On the next slide, we have a rezoning working group that has had 8 meetings, a rezoning task force that has met twice. You can see the video outreach on our website. I can't talk enough about our family engagement team and the amount of events. They were at Fiestas Patronales. They were at, my son's basketball game. They were everywhere, everywhere and anywhere. You'll find our family engagement team handing out pamphlets to do the best we can to get this information out to our families. We've hired outreach consultants and worked with folks from Enlace and Nairobi from One Holyoke to really help. These are some great institutions in our community that already have a lot of connections with families. And we wanted to tap into those resources because we think that that's a really good way to get information out to our families on this important topic. We've hired some technical consultants. A big part of this process is redrawing boundary lines and going into GIS information, where kids live, how far away. Like, there's a lot of technical aspects involved in that. And AppGeo is our technical consultant on this. You can see that on our slide. Moving forward, I think it's really important that everyone know how the decisions are going to be made. And I want to just ground us. We have many equity commitments, but the 2 I want to highlight here is the first one is we ensure that students, families, and staff get the support they need to be successful. That's why we're doing this in the first place. That is why we are doing this in the first place. We think that this new model is going to help better support our students, families, and staff. The second one I want to highlight is that we seek out and incorporate the voices of those impacted with a commitment to include those who have been excluded in the past. That's very important to me. As a kid that, I had, my mom had 9 foster kids, and then it was me and my brother, and then my grandmother also had foster. I don't think one time my mom talked to anyone from the school about any decisions that they made, or my grandmother. You saw today we have interpretation services. Those are things that, back in the day, we weren't offering that to our families. So we're doing everything we can to try to reach those families like my mom and like my grandmother and make sure that their voice is heard in this process. Now, one of the biggest things that we did in the rezoning task force is, before we enter into this project, what are the most important things that we need to consider? What should guide our decision making? And you can see here, based on the surveys and the people in the room, I think we surveyed over 123 people. These were all the things that as a collective group, we decided this is what's most important as we move through this process. One is that we design schools that put students' needs first, and that we prioritize money spent on instruction, which I talked about earlier. The other one is that we ensure equitable access to special programs. So we want to make sure that when we do have two new middle schools, that it's not like one of them is over-resourced and one of them is under-resourced and one of them has music, the other one doesn't have music. We want to make sure that whatever we build, students have high quality access to special programming like the arts and world languages and things like that, and enough SEL. So that's really important to the people that we talk to as we move forward. Very important is that we balance student demographic across schools, especially in our middle schools. You know, a lot of families expressed in the elementary grades that it was important to have their school close by for their elementary kids, but in middle schools, what was more important is that we balance the demographics, even if it means can't walk to the school. Our middle schoolers are a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and you know, families felt a little easier about putting their kid on a bus and sending them to middle school as opposed to the school being right in their neighborhood. Ensure program continuity from elementary to middle school. That means, you know, like everybody at Lawrence moves up to a certain middle school, not half the class go to one school, the other half go to a different middle school. We wanted to, that's what was important. And then ensure efficient use of space and stable enrollment. Whatever we do needs to work now and needs to work in 2026 when we hopefully have a new school. The still important, but not ranked as high, was ensuring safe walking routes, having neighborhood schools, especially in the elementary, like I talked about, and then minimizing the impact of families and minimizing transportation costs. Now, the announcement is going to be in 2 phases. By late October, we hope to announce the following, which we're calling phase 1. And that's on the next slide. Phase 1, we want to announce which schools are going to be elementary schools and middle schools, both in 2023 and in 2026. We want to announce what the principals are going to be in these schools and what we're doing with the dual language programming and where that program is going to live. The second phase of this, the most important pieces I want to highlight is that by late November, we want to do the technical parts of that, draw the boundaries. And so if you live in this neighborhood, this is the school you go to. And then we want to make decisions on where the special ed programming is going to be. You know, we don't want, you know, for example, right now, the large majority of our ABL students is at one school. We want to have some balance so that that's not the case moving forward. That's what's been expressed to us throughout this process. And then the last thing is just if we are going to convert one of our existing schools into a middle school, making sure we identify what investments need to be made. What investments need to be made to make that happen. So we have some really big decisions to make in the next couple months, and one of them is that we hope to have by 2026. We hope to have 2 middle schools, right? There's going to be 2 buildings. We're either going to have in 2026 a brand new PEC building, or we're going to have the old PEC building that we have right now. And then the second building, we're deciding on is the second middle school going to be at Donahue? Is it going to be at Kelly, or is it going to be at Sullivan? So those are some really big decisions that we want to make in November so that we can start building and planning towards that. One of the major takeaways from our initial work is that the 3 scenarios that we are putting forward to the public, they'll all work. You know, it really comes down to what the community's preference is on where that second middle school is. You know, we all, you know, most of us have deep rooted connections here, and we know where we think we might want a middle school and what the impact would be on the families in different neighborhoods like Lyman Terrace, like the Flats. And so we want to make sure that like we make the right decision, but whatever decision we make, the school department's ed plan will work regardless. So I wanted to just briefly summarize the scenarios, which are 2 slides after this. So this is a quick table that shows the Donahue middle scenario, the Kelly middle scenario, and the Sullivan middle scenario. And in all of these scenarios, we have 6 elementary schools feeding into 2 middle schools eventually, but 3 middle schools temporarily until we get a new school. All of these scenarios have pre-K at different locations in the cities, and then the location of the dual language program is different in the scenarios, but it's always either at Ian White or Kelly, unless Kelly's actually the middle school. And in some cases, it's the whole dual language program, which is 4 classrooms of dual language per grade, or it's what we call a half dual language program, which is 2 classrooms of dual language and then 2 traditional classrooms that are not part of the dual language program. In all cases, Holyoke Middle School closes next year and Peck closes temporarily until a new building is built in hopefully 2026. And then STEM and Metcalf would close once that new building is built, and they would move into that new building. So you can see here the different scenarios. I won't go through line by line, but anyone interested in getting into this in more detail, please feel free to come to the community meeting that we have tomorrow, and there'll be people available. First, we're going to go into it a little deeper, but there'll also be people available to talk after the meeting if you have any questions. We internally, on the next slide, you can see that we created guidelines, or the guidelines were already created. I presented them on slide 16. We had a rating system based on those guidelines that we said most important, very important, and important. And this is the weight that we assigned. Like the first 2 get 5 points, 3 points, and then 1 point, based on, you know, what we had discussed earlier in the presentation. And we stacked that against where we are now and stacked it against the 3 scenarios that we're presenting to the community. And on the next slide, what you can see is that HPS today has a lot of red. You can see that it was ranked very low in designing schools that put students' needs first and prioritizing money spent on instruction. Talked about this earlier. We had 11 different schools with 9 different grade configurations. And in many of our schools, there's only 2 grades per 2 homerooms per classroom in the elementary grades. That's a very inefficient model to run. And it's a model that doesn't really support staff, and it doesn't really give students a rich experience, a real middle school experience, you know. So in the other 3 scenarios, Donahue Middle, Kelly Middle, Sullivan Middle, you can see that rated really high. The biggest takeaway that I want people to get from today's meeting is that you can see we're ranked really low today, but in all the other 3 scenarios, despite Sullivan Middle ranking the highest, they're all relatively way better than what we're doing right now. 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7. None of them is like a runaway choice. It's like I said earlier, it's going to come down to community preference, and the input that, you know, that we get from the community. And we're going to have a school committee retreat where we discuss this more in detail, and I make a recommendation to them based on the feedback that I'm hearing. But this is really the biggest thing I wanted everyone to take away, is that all 3 options are way better than where we're at right now. And I just reiterated that on the next slide. So this is the different way of saying it, so we can skip over it. Now the Donahue, I'll go through these really quickly. The Donahue scenario, you can see in that scenario, we have Lawrence, Morgan, and Sullivan feeding into Donahue Middle School. So there's program continuity in this scenario. If you attend Lawrence or Morgan or Sullivan, you actually move on with your classmates to Donahue Middle School, and you join the other 2 schools, and that ends up being your school. And then if you attend Ian White, Kelly, or McMahon, then you would move on to Peck to continue with to have that continuity. Versus the next slide, I'm sorry, the next slide is actually a map of what our zones are on the left-hand side. You can, and this is very tentative. We still got to work through and tweak and make sure we have the right demographics. But this is a rough draft of if Donahue was a middle school, this is what our boundaries would look like in the elementary grades. And then in the middle school grades, you could see the two zones for the middle schools, Donahue and Peck. The next option is Kelly being a middle school. And you can see that continuity of programming is broken in that scenario. So if you go to Ian White, 4 of our schools don't have that continuity. Ian White would end up going to Kelly Middle. But Morgan, Lawrence, and Sullivan, some kids would end up going to Kelly and some kids would end up going. You could have a kid that you sat next to, you know, your entire elementary, and that student is going to Kelly and you're going to Peck. So it all depends on where you live, which was one of the reasons why this one was rated a little lower on the last chart that I showed, because that continuity is broken in programming. The only 2 schools in this option that do have continuity of program and doesn't break up kids is the Ian White school and the Donahue school. If you know, and Donahue and at Ian White, you would either be going to Kelly or Peck. And you can see here the map for that scenario as well, Kelly scenario. The next one is Sullivan's scenario. You can see that Donahue, McMahon, and Morgan would be feeding into Sullivan Middle School, and then Lawrence, Ian White, and Kelly would be feeding into Peck in 2026. Then you can see the map for, you know, the map for those zones as well, which again, we have a lot of this information on our website. And then the last part of the meeting, of the community meeting that we're going to have, is really to have a discussion and a breakout. We'll break people out into groups and we'll ask them, like, what questions do you have? Which building do you think should be the second middle school, and why do you think that? Which scenario do you like and why? And which scenario do you like least and why? And then we'll make sure to remind them to take that quick survey that we have so that we can collect all this information, have a discussion about it, and, you know, or make sure when we have our school committee retreat, we have all that information available to be able to discuss. So that's what the community meeting looks like. We encourage everyone to attend that community meeting. We've already had one at Kelly. It was very well attended. I want to thank all the families that attended that night. The kids had a great time with the YMCA and with Learn in Motion, and the families had really great questions. I mean, one of the things that I've observed and that I've noticed is that a lot of people are entering this space from a very personal space, and that is totally understandable. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, people want to know, like, that's all great information, but I want to know what's happening with my kid. And you know, we don't have a 100% answer on that until we make certain decisions. So we can talk through, like, okay, where does your kid live right now on this map, and what grade is he or she in? We could talk through what the scenarios are depending on what decisions we make. So that's what you could expect at these community meetings. The next slide just shows basically the community meetings that we already had. We had one at Kelly on September 14th. We had a virtual one on the 21st at 9 a.m. And then we have one tomorrow at 5:30, and then another virtual one. So we're creating another opportunity at 5:30 on October 11th to give other people an opportunity to provide input and to learn about this important initiative. We're going to be having a school committee retreat late in October, and hopefully having some good discussion about this. And we're going to continue. Like I said, I was at open house. We were you know, I was telling families to come tomorrow. Our survey actually closes on the 13th. So we want to make sure as many people as possible can fill that out. And again, we want to hear from people. We want to make sure, unlike the last time this was done, where like decisions were made and then people were told what was going to happen and then everyone got involved. I know that, it's likely that some people are still going to feel that way, but I think it's super important to provide opportunities for input so that we can make a really informed decision that reflects, a lot of the input that we get from family, staff, students, and anybody in the community that wants to provide it. So thank you. That was a long presentation, a lot of information, but it's just so important. I can't stress how important this is for our community and our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Do any of my friends on the committee have questions? Miss Murphy Rumboletti.
Yeah, girl, let's not rush things, but hi friends. Thank you so much to Anthony for that presentation. Super helpful. I don't have children in the Holyoke Public Schools yet, but I have a lot of people that I know who do. And, I actually was contacted by several parents that have their children at Metcalf School, specifically, who were feeling pretty blindsided by the news about redistricting. And I'm sure folks on this call have heard that, and I'm sure, Anthony, you've also probably been contacted through your office, but I just felt like it was important to share, especially because I really do appreciate the way that you are approaching all of this with the community in mind and trying to do as many sources of outreach as possible. So, the feedback that I did receive from folks was that there have been a lot of talk about rezoning, which is great, but that there just wasn't a lot of super specific details about who was going to be rezoned and what that looked like. And so, especially for a few of the parents that contacted me from Metcalf, it really seemed like to them that the communication wasn't super clear. A few of them who really seem like engaged parents, they found out through social media. And I think some of them are just wondering, given the success of Metcalf, was it our very first dual language program school? What was the reasoning behind choosing Metcalf to kind of separate or kind of dismantle? Because I'm sure there's reasons behind it, but it seems like for those parents, it might not have been super clear. And to be clear, a lot of them are planning to go to your upcoming meeting tomorrow, and I'll make sure to let them know about the 11th, but I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Murphy Rumboletti. The first thing I was going to say, please tell them to come to the meeting tomorrow, so that we can have that dialogue. I mean, Metcalf's a really, really small school, right? It's been growing to the point where we even had to rent a space to accommodate middle schools. We took over the old Blessed Sacrament building, which is not a great facility right now, but you can see it really was down to space constraints, right? That's even an example of where we're operating these smaller schools throughout the city, and it's very inefficient. And if we really want our dual language program to be successful, it would rely on having 4 classrooms per grade for a whole dual language, and at least two homerooms per grade for a half dual language program. We've had a dual language task force meet to talk about the direction of the middle schools. A lot of families are interested in that. But the reality is Metcalf has 14 classrooms. So it's very small. It doesn't have a lot of green space. It doesn't we have in every one of these scenarios, like the building that the dual language program would be going into is a much better facility than Metcalf. If Kelly's the building, they got a baseball field in the back. They got 2 gyms. They got an actual cafeteria. They got space. for different things, the library. You know, if Sullivan's the one they got, you know, they got more green space, they have a gym, they have an actual, like, there's just, Metcalf is a very, very small building. So that's why, that would be one of the buildings that would, when we build a new middle school, that would be one of the buildings. Now, I will say that so like, until we build a new middle school, we still planned on using the Metcalf facility, and we still plan on having the STEM program dual co-located with Dean right now. We hope that it is the will of the city council and the mayor that we can get this new building so that we can get STEM out of Dean and continue to grow that vocational program, which has done an amazing job turning around. But I'm continuing to hear from the business community and other people in the community, like, we need to invest in Dean and we need to bring back certain shops, and we can't do that until we get STEM middle school out of there. And when we have a new middle school, the whatever school is at Metcalf would be feeding into that new middle school. So we would still be using that facility. That's not, you know, that facility wouldn't be just done next year.
Got it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that too, as a Metcalf parent and as a parent of dual language children, I've also been contacted with parents from Metcalf, and I've had really success in discussing this with them and just helping them understand that, you know, the shift in location may affect our little ones, but the community, the community we've built in Metcalf, the programming we've built at Metcalf will follow our students no matter what building they end up in. And the redistricting, as you see from the presentation, is going to benefit every student throughout the city. So, you know, whether it's my student or your student or the student down the street, someone's going to have to move. And, you know, we definitely encourage as many parents to reach out as necessary, come to as many meetings, but it's also important to understand that these initial presentations, we don't have that definitive answer yet. This is to get the information out, to survey the public, to get an understanding of what they also feel like we should do to as the final decisions. But I can say, and I think Mr. Soto will support, that Metcalf has to come offline because it's simply not big enough to support the vision of the district. So in 2023 fall, what will happen is the middle school students of Metcalf who are currently occupying a building that we don't own would transition back into the actual Metcalf building that we do own until the fall of 26 when we have a proposed new building. So Metcalf itself will stay online for 3 more years. It just won't house the elementary students. And I think it's important to know, like we said, we're dedicated to the dual language program here in the city. We're dedicated to seeing it grow and ensuring that it flourishes. So no student who's at Metcalf now has to worry about not having space in the new dual language building or anything like that. You know, it might not be the exact same staff, but as far as community and the environment we've grown there, that I feel confident in saying that will transfer with our students.
No, I appreciate that. And I think the parents that did reach out to me, like, I think they understood that someone has to be moved. We get it. We understand that it's for like the good of all the people and it's good. I think a lot of them just were a little surprised and it felt like a lot. And so I can appreciate that. And I just, you know, I wanted to make sure I brought that up. I don't even think they were reaching out because they realized I was on this committee. So I felt like I just needed to make sure that I shared that. And, you know, I'm probably going to have other questions, Anthony. So I'll follow up and, you know, Thank you, everyone.
And feel free to refer those parents to us too as school committee members.
Yeah,
for sure.
And Tessa, to the parents that may have said like this felt like they were blindsided, please have them reach out to our communications director so that we can understand more, because part of this presentation was just showing you all the outreach that happened since 2020 and all the outreach that happened over the last 7 years. Like, this is not new. We have been talking about this for so many years. And in fact, we've been moving in that direction for so many years. So like, if anyone has better ideas on how we can reach, how we can better reach our parents, we are open to it. We've tried Facebook, we've tried Instagram, we've emailed all HPS families through Blackboard Connect. We've tried our website, we've tried these community meetings. We were at everywhere, like we've tried everything, but I sympathize with the family member that says this, you know, where is this coming from? I want to understand like how we could better communicate, because that's one of the things that's really important to me. I want to reach people like my grandmother and like my mom, you know, like people that weren't involved in knowing information like this. So
Right. Yeah.
if there's recommendations they have, I'd love to hear it, please.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Ms. Rivera Colon?
I just have a quick question, and it's kind of general. Is STEM programming going to be still part of the middle schools, or is that gonna disappear as well?
We'd like STEM opportunities for in both of our schools. Yadilet, we talked about this. Like, I know it's called STEM middle school, but really, is it STEM? I don't know that we can really stand behind calling STEM middle school like real STEM programming, right? I think that in both middle schools, we need to have students should have access to STEM, and that would be the goal, right? Like, there's gonna, even though one of the schools is gonna have dual language in it, they still should have opportunities to engage in STEM material and activities and engaging things. And I know that you're really passionate about that, so that's really my vision, is that both schools have those opportunities. But in the future, it's gonna be Peck Middle School and either Sullivan Middle School or Kelly Middle School or Donahue Middle School. It's not going to be called STEM school, but I strongly believe in STEM opportunities.
Thank you. I just wanted others to be able to hear that as well.
All right, so seeing no other hands or further discussion necessary, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Soto. The last item on our agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve our meeting minutes from our previous meeting. The motion by Mr. Anderson Burgos and seconded by Mr. Willihan. On a roll call, Mr. Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Willihan,
Yes.
Ms. Rivera Colon.
Abstained.
She wasn't here yet. Ms. Murphy Romboletti,
Yes.
and a yes for myself, who's Ms. Brunel. And on that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded. No, Mr. Anderson Burgos makes the motion.
Yes.
Ms. Rivera,
Second.
second. So again, on roll call, Mr. Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Willihan,
Yes.
Ms. Rivera Colon,
Yes.
and Ms. Murphy Romboletti.
Yes.
Meeting is officially adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, friends. Bye.
Bye.